Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon Friends podcast. I am Simon Shortt. Joining me this week is Ben Parker. Ben, welcome in, man. How you doing?
I am doing so good, man. The draft is finally here. I'm really, really looking forward to it. But we still have one more show to do before it gets here.
One more show to do, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the fifth annual over under first round preview show with Ben Parker. If you're here on the Simon and Friends podcast, thank you so much. Hopefully, this isn't the first time you've heard it, but hey, if it is, well, welcome in, man. You can go back and check the archives. I say I'm going to do this every year, Ben. I'll never
Yeah.
do it, but I should go back through and see, check our numbers, check our stats from the previous four iterations of this pod. But we're here tonight to check back in, see how we're doing. And then if you're here on Box Score Network YouTube, thank you so much for being here. Hopefully you have enjoyed all of our content here on Box Score Network. This is coming out Thursday. We're going to try to keep this tight for everybody so you can watch, listen, learn, take your last few notes, make your last few guesses before tonight's draft kicks off. But hopefully, if you have a little bit more time or you want to squeeze in some second round thoughts or some team draft big picture thoughts or positional draft big picture thoughts, go back through the archives here on Box Score Network because we have all the draft content you could have needed for this draft season.
Yeah.
And we're not done yet. Ben and I are going to hop back on tonight, Thursday night, for Friday morning and react to round one of the draft. And then plenty of our shows will have reactions and recaps, whether they're here on Box Score or they're on the individual pods, individual show runs. So just go check those out as well. Stay with us all draft season and post draft season because we are here for you. So the name of the game, Ben, it's very simple. It's actually a really messy name, but it makes it very clear what we're here to do tonight. The 2026 NFL Draft First Round Over Under Preview Show. We're just going to go through all the positions, and I have set a line for Ben, and we're going to decide, is this going to go over? Is this going to go under? How many guys are taken in the first round? And we'll talk about who our locks are. We'll talk about some of the guys on the bubble, some ranges those guys can get into as well, so you know what to expect. Ben, anything for you on this subject before we get started?
The only thing I'll say is there's basically 11 positions here. I found eight of them to be fairly easy for me to decide on. Three of them were really hard. So we'll get into that later, but that's kind of where I came in at.
And we'll highlight like which players that could be okay. Are they a tackle? Are they a guard? Are they an edge? Are they a linebacker? Are they a corner? Are they a safety? We'll highlight where those players landed in the buckets for us. It'll be pretty easy once we get there. But let's start off hot at quarterback, Ben. I have set this line at 1.5. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Ty Simpson in the last few months, but he is obviously the second best quarterback in this draft. He's a guy that I think is certainly of the quarterbacking ability to be the case of the Jackson Dart, like trade back up into the first round four. I just don't think there's a team this year that should be doing that. I don't see that kind of intersection of a team and a player to do that this year with Simpson and with those teams that could be doing that. But I've set this line at 1.5. I'm saying one. I say no Ty Simpson, and I'm locking in Fernando Mendoza. Obviously, going to be the first overall pick to the Raiders. What did you have for QB 1.5?
I came in the same way, and this was one of the three really hard choices for me. It was really hard to try to figure out is a team, one of really two or three teams, right? There's not many, two or three teams. Is there a team that's really going to want him bad enough to trade back into the first round? I ultimately decided no, but boy, that's tough. Man, that's like a 51-49 split. So I've got the under. I have one quarterback going, Mendoza as the lock.
That's what I had as well. So yeah, it just if you want to start wondering about when this is going to happen, when this could happen, I'd start being on watch around pick number 23 with the Eagles. Now,
Yeah,
if the offensive
yeah.
linemen go early or the Cardinals or Jets just want to send something stupid to Philadelphia, like first round pick next year, second round pick next year, stupid. And move back to 33, 34 plus get a day two pick this year. I think the Eagles at 23 would be the earliest team I could see. Um, Seattle, I think at 32 would be the latest team. You know, they only have four picks, and the Cardinals could just hop two picks, hop over the Jets, right, to try to get Ty Simpson at 32. And then I think the Bills are the sweet spot at 26 because they don't have a second rounder from the DJ Moore trade. And their needs are edge, wide receiver. and both of those positions extend a little bit right into the 30s into the second round.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about some of those players in a little bit. So I think those would be kind of that's the range 23 to 32. Those are the teams I think would start thinking about trading back. I think it'd be for the Jets. I think it'd be for the Cardinals. I don't think the Browns would quite get into this camp trying to jump up and trade up for Ty Simpson. Um, but ultimately, I think this will just end up in a game of chicken between the Jets and the Cardinals. Are you going to trade? Are you going to trade? And then the Cardinals say, all right, you going to take him with the first pick? We'll take him at 34. You want to take him at 44? Or are you going to take him at 33? That's what I think is going to end up happening. And ultimately, I'm going to say I think he ends up with the Cardinals at 34.
It's a great point. The Jets have every reason not to do it at all since they are loaded for next year's draft that looks like it might be better at quarterback. The Cardinals have every reason to draft him, but man, when you trade up for him, it's a pretty big commitment, right? All of a sudden, first round pick, lots of attention, as opposed to, yeah, we just got this guy in the second round because he was sitting there. It really does start to be more of a commitment, and I'm not sure that they love him enough to do that. So that's why I went with the under there.
All right, Ben. Next up, running backs. I also set this at 1.5. This was an easy under, easy lock Jeremiah Love for me.
Me as well. I didn't even have anybody on the bubble here for running back. It's not that I don't think there's some good running backs that could hit second round at some point, maybe. I just don't have anybody that's even close for first after you get past Jeremiah Love.
If you were still somebody that was holding up the ever so slightest amount of hope for the Seahawks taking Jadarian Price at pick 32, you're literally banking on the 32nd pick. Um, John Schneider has come out and said that, like, yes, he's trying to trade out of 32. He would love to trade out of 32. So you don't not only like the likelihood that they're still there at 32, right, is lower, but you don't actively say you want to trade out of 32, which is the most like forward-thinking move you could make, and then take a running back at that spot. You just don't do it. So it's an easy under. You got one running back going. Lock Jeremiah Love. Wide receiver. I set this at 5.5, Ben. Now, if you would have asked us back in October when we did the wide receiver, running back, tight end show, we probably would have said this is light. But we did this in our mock just the other night. Box Score
Yeah.
Network 4.0 2 round mock. Wide receivers fell. It has been feeling like wide receivers are going to fall. My locks are Carnell Tate, Makai Lemon, Jordan Tyson, Omar Cooper Jr., Kevin Concepcion. And those are the five that I think get in. I think Denzel Boston ends up in the second round. And then after that, it's, Brazel and Bell and Dribbling and all those guys. I think all those guys are going to end up being day two picks. What did you have here for wide receiver?
I came in under as well. I'll talk through my reason in a second. It is a heck of a group of wide receivers this year. It's a really good, deep group. You can almost get anything you want in, almost any of the first three rounds, really. So if you've got a certain flavor or need, you can get it. But that also, I think, is going to affect how they go in the first round here. You talked about that being in our mock. I was already feeling that heading into the, even a month ago, I was starting to feel that here. I actually only have three locks as far as specific names
Hmm.
go. Okay, that's Tate, Tyson, Lemon.
Yep.
Now I'm fairly comfortable saying we're going to get to four or five wide receivers. I'm just not comfortable that they're absolute locks. So it's Concepcion, Boston, Brazel, Cooper, those being the four bubble guys for me. Man, the more mocks I did, and we've done a bunch, I just hardly ever myself got the six wide receivers in the first round. So I'm sitting at four, probably five wide receivers. I think I'll settle in at five. I just hardly ever got the six.
Yeah, I guess I should, differentiate probably the term lock, right? Like Tate, Lemon, Tyson are locks. And then if I'm saying five, it's probably two of Boston, Cooper, Concepcion, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it wouldn't shock me
yes,
if Boston went and Concepcion didn't. Because, you look at Omar Cooper, like was in an insanely good offense, like is really good at everything, not great at anything. Concepcion has the injury, right? He had the knee scope and then the drop situation
yeah,
people are worried about. And then Boston, like not a great separator, doesn't run a 40 at any workouts. Um, so there's questions about all of them. I feel pretty safe in saying two of those three guys make it in. I wouldn't feel very secure about saying three of them, which hence the under 5.5. And I
yeah,
definitely don't think a fourth one, right? If you add in a Brazel Bell or one of those guys. Um,
yeah.
in terms of the runs, in terms of the spots, I wanted to leave a little bit of room because I do think I think there's possibility that there's a world where these guys actually end up going early. Like if we looked up and um, those three guys all go top 10, that wouldn't necessarily shock me either, right?
Right.
If you're talking about the Titans at 4, and then you get to the Giants at 5, Commanders at 7, I mean, Browns at 6, like Saints at 8. I know from a value board standpoint, but we had this conversation last week. You wouldn't love it, but like all those teams could use receivers. Um, and then you look at the Dolphins at 11, Rams at 13, Ravens 14, Jets 16, Panthers 19, Steelers 21, Eagles 23, Browns 24, Bills 26, 49ers 27, Patriots 31. Those could all be wide receiver teams too. So I think there's a world for it. But then when you look at the players, Tate is a top 10 guy. Lemon, we love at 13 to the Rams. Tyson could go 9 to the Chiefs, but he could also go 14 or 16 to the Ravens or Jets. But I think 16 would be his floor. So if we're saying those are the best three players, and the range of that is somewhere in the like 6 to 16 range, those guys are going to go, then you're shrinking where these other guys could go, right? So now we're really talking about like the Panthers at 19 being the earliest one of these other guys go. So if Concepcion and Cooper more kind of live in that 19 to 31 range, and maybe so does Boston, um, it just shrinks everything down. I'm going with 5 for them. But over here on my piece of paper, we'll lock in Tate, Tyson, and Lemon, and we'll go from there. We'll revisit that. Tight end, I said at 1.5, and I went with 1 and Kenyon Sadiq.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And to me, there's a whole cluster of tight ends. I'm not even totally sure who people think tight end two really is when it comes to NFL personnel. We'll just see. I think there's a whole cluster of tight ends you can get in the second round and
Yep.
third round as well. After that, I think it dries up for me personally. But I've only got one guy in the first round. I'm not even totally convinced that everybody in the NFL thinks he's a first round lock, but I do figure enough people like him, I would be shocked if he slid out of the first round.
I've gone back and forth with Sadiq through this whole process, and but never in the sense of like not knowing who or what he is or how good he, it'll just be about what do teams value. And the
Right.
thing that really sold it for me, actually, for NFL Mocks, the site I write for now, when I went to write my proposal for them, and I was like, here's why Sadiq won't work. He's under 6'4". He's under 250 pounds. He barely lined up in line in college, even though he is a pretty good blocker. So he's a guy without a position. But then Brock Bowers, that all that fits Brock Bowers, all that fit Dalton Kincaid, all that fit Trey McBride. So you've got
Yeah.
the best two tight ends in the NFL, and all three and two of those three guys were first round picks. So this guy's gonna go first round. The talent's too tantalizing. I hope it's to the right team because if it is, he could be awesome. Or he
Yes.
could go somewhere and they're just not gonna know how to use him and it's gonna be awkward. But anyways, Kenyon Sadiq, we're bringing in, we're hitting the one. No Claire, no Stour sneaking to the first round of this draft. Offensive tackle. I set this at 6.5, Ben, and it will not shock you to hear I'm taking the over. And I'm just logging all those guys in. I didn't think twice about it. Maui Noah, Fano, Freeling, Lomu, Proctor, Ian Achor, and Blake Miller. I think all 7 of those guys get into the first round. Um, yeah, what say you?
I took the under, but man, this was so tough. This was one of
Who'd
the
you leave
three
off?
tough positions. I left off Ian Nachor is the one I left off.
Okay.
So I Malinoa lock, Fano lock, Lomu lock, Proctor fairly a lock, Freeling a lock. And even though my feelings on Miller are that he probably shouldn't be a first rounder, it feels like there has consistently now for a long period of time been enough people who like Miller that I think him and position that's probably a lock as well. So those were my 6 locks. Ian Achor, man, I like him, but it does feel like there's some work to do there,
Yeah.
and that's where when I was weighing other positions like defensive tackle or CB, it started to feel like that might be the guy who slipped out. So I held it to 6 tackles, and that's the one I dropped out. But that was tough. One of the 3 tough positions for me.
Yeah, and it's hard. I think Ian Achor is a guy that name didn't really get brought up super a lot until the Senior Bowl. Like I think he was always kind of on the list. I was like, what I said Blake Miller was last year, just like the classic day 2 tackle that people kind of write in, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because Caleb Tiernan, I think, is technically that guy now, but he's at the very end of like the second round, and normally these
Hmm.
guys are like in the 40s or 50s on mocks and boards and stuff. but I think he had a Senior Bowl that where he really stood out, and the story's awesome. Just started playing football a couple years ago. Um, Very athletic, very smooth. But yeah, if he's going to be like a good part of your offense, a good offensive line right now, that's going to take some serious work. And I think more teams are going to view him as a little more of a project than we are on the outside, where we just get to look at the traits and think about the
Yeah.
potential, how young he is, how little he's played. And there are going to be teams that are like, we might have to wait on that. And remember, there's one fewer team with an offensive line mastermind teaching guru in Jeff Stoutland not being with Philly anymore. So
Yeah.
are they going to be this slam dunk team continuing forward of like draft and develop these guys and they're going to be all pros? Like, we don't know. We don't know. So we'll have to see what happens. Um, Okay, we're possibly leaving Iheanacho. So, what do you think if he's on the bubble? What do you think his range is, though? How high do you think he could go, and then how low do you think he could realistically fall in the second round?
I could see him going as high as 25. Like that
Right.
wouldn't shock me at all.
Hmm.
Man, a team likes him, they throw him in, you know?
Yeah.
That wouldn't shock me. I personally would be a little surprised if he drops farther than 40. You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of those first, what, five, no, first eight picks of the second
Yeah.
round. That would shock me. So 25 to 40 is kind of like my wide range. My thin range would be kind of in the 28 to 34 bracket. So,
Okay. I had the Raiders in our mock the other night at 36, and they would love a right tackle. I had them moving
right.
up to get a right tackle in that mock. So I think if he's there, that would, to me, that feels like that could be his floor. Um, But yeah, that range makes sense as well. I wouldn't want to spend a top 20 pick on him because that means like he's slam dunk ready to go. If you're a team that could wait a little bit, like the Eagles at 23, great. But I think that makes sense. All right, interior offensive line. I set this at 1.5. I think this is our most interesting 1.5 actually. Um, Obviously, but I did go under. I went with one, and I went with Ione, of course. Ben, where did you go with the interior offensive lineman?
So I took the under on this as well, and you've done a great job setting the numbers here. But I took the under. I've got one guy, Vega Iwane. I think by now I've crawled him up to 19th or 20th on my big board, right?
Yep.
Took me a while to get there, but that's where I finally gotten, even one concern notwithstanding. Bazantis was the bubble guy for me. I just didn't, and it wouldn't surprise me if he showed up in the first round, but I just didn't consistently see here watch enough myself to convince myself that it's likely he ends up in the first round. I think he ends up somewhere in the 40 to 45 range, probably. So I kept Bizantis out of the first round.
My bubble guy, I would say I'm closer on Pregnon than Bezantis being that guy. The other, I mean, there's a lot of bubble names though, and this is the
Yeah.
real case for it.
Yep.
Pregnon, Bezantis, Rutledge, and Dunker. Now, I didn't get to watch Dunker. Um, Bezantis is a guy that feels like needs to get a little bit stronger and clean some things up a little. Like doesn't have. I like his hand use, but I don't think it's super consistent. Rutledge is a guy that you watch him, and this is so messed up. Um, it's on football Twitter. I have to be able to say it. The video of the young child football player who was blind. And he says, "I just love football. I love to hit," and and then it's him going out there and blocking with what the F is going on? Screamo music behind. Like that's kind of what Keelan Rutledge is doing out there, man. And like
Yeah.
and like you can tell he's athletic. Um,
Right.
but he's so explosive off the line, but sometimes it's kind of like he just gets in there and then there's like not quite anybody there. Now but he always redirects. He's on balance usually, but sometimes he's on the ground because of I think Pregnon is just a very clear like when the Bills took Osiris Torrance. And even though I think they ended up getting him in the second round, I remember mocking him in the first round to because it was like, if you just need one spot,
Hmm.
this guy's just gonna come in and he's just gonna take whoever you put in front of him and he's just gonna push them out of the way. Like
Right.
he's not very flashy, but he's just gonna push people out of the way, which is the whole point. Um, and I went through the teams. So let's say Iwane goes on the top 20. The Steelers at 21, the Chargers at 22, the Bills at 26, the Niners at 27, the Patriots at 31 could all look at a left guard right now. If the Patriots, they spent money on Elijah Vera Tucker, so probably not. But if they wanted to double up on the whole injury thing for AVT, those are the teams that could go left guard. And Pregnon and Basantis are left guards. They did that for
Yeah.
majority of their time in college. Um, but then if you want to flip over to right guard teams, I'd say the Eagles and the Seahawks at 23 and 32, they're more right guard teams. So that would be more Rutledge and Dunker. So again, that leans me more towards the left side guys and Pregnon and Bizantis. But ultimately, I say no as well. Go with Ioane. Teams are going to get some good cards in the second round. I can't wait for. I'm already excited for Friday night. We haven't even had Thursday night yet, and I'm like, I can't wait for Friday night to see who takes these guards and just pencil them into those starting lineups because I'm going to do that probably with all four of those guys.
It's so weird. We have people plotting, and this is every draft for decades now. We have people plotting to get guys that they're salivating over, but in the second round, right? Not the first. It's like, well, he doesn't have this or that, makes him first round worthy. But yeah, we're going to be plotting to get that guy right there at pick 43, right? I mean, it's a little odd, but it happens every year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's flip over to the defense. Well, actually, let's recap the offense real quick. So we both went under on interior offensive line. We both say one. I went over, and that was 1.5, the over under. Over under on tackles was 6.5. I went over with 7. You went under with 6, leaving off Iheanacho. 1.5 for tight end. We both went under with Sadiq. Running back, I'll take that easy. 1.5 under 1. Jeremiah Love. Quarterback, 1.5 under 1. Fernando Mendoza. Wide receiver, 5.5. We both went under. I think it'll be 5. You were in the 4 or 5 range.
Yeah,
So we'll see how we ultimately end up mapping that out a little bit later. But so far we're 5 and under. We're split on tackle, so we're under on offense overall, which isn't
right.
too surprising. We'll get to edges in a minute where there's a big group there. But let's start with defensive tackles. I set the defensive tackle over under at 1.5. And I ultimately went over. I ultimately took the 2. I think Peter Woods and Caden McDonald get into the first round of the draft. You could also look at guys like Caleb Banks. You could look at Kristen Miller. But I think the 2 guys that are generally viewed at the top because of the Banks injury concerns ultimately get in. Talent wins out. And then the run defense of McDonald specifically is going to be something that entices teams. What did you end up going with here at defensive tackle?
Yeah, exactly same as you. This was one of my three hardest positions. This was really hard for me here at defensive tackle. I'm like, dang it, is the second one going to get in? Is there a chance none of them get in? There's even a chance
Yep.
no defensive tackles go in the first round. But I just didn't see it that way. The more we did the drafts here, it feels like two get in. So I did the same as you. I've got Peter Woods getting in. I believe that's probably going to end up being best player available for somebody. They're
Hmm.
just I don't feel like he's sitting there at 15 or 18 for most people, but boy, it's best player available for somebody before he gets out of the first round. And then Caden McDonald, I actually don't have a first round grade on McDonald. I think most drafts he wouldn't be a first round pick, but this draft I think he's going to get in. And I specifically think that because there are teams in the back half of the first round who could use a big defensive tackle who could stop the run. It's just a specific need field is what it really is. Man, they actually took him off. Ohio State took him off the field for passing plays because he couldn't generate too much pressure. He just really they took him off the field most of the time. But boy, he feels a need, and you can see two or
Hmm.
three teams just sitting right there taking him and I got McDonald in and the Caleb Banks thing, the injury, the medical stuff, the injury stuff's gonna wipe him completely out of probably the first 2 rounds more than
Hmm.
likely.
Hmm.
Um and then Kristen Miller, who I do like, I just don't have anywhere near the first round myself. So that's
Yeah.
came in the same as you.
There's always one just like no like run stuff and nose tackle that gets in. Last year it was Tyleik
Hmm.
Williams, was from Ohio State.
Yeah.
Whenever Mozzie Smith was when and like granted these things haven't worked out, right? Like Mozzie Smith it just never clicked with Dallas. They kept changing what
Nope.
they wanted him to be. He ends up now he's in the Jet with the Jets. I think even Tyleik Williams hasn't had the like didn't have a great start in Detroit. Um but like teams value this type of player, right?
Hmm.
Okay, who's going to come in and just stop the run? And when you're the Bears and you're the worst run defense in the league, but you're trying to win a Super Bowl, if you're sitting there at 25 and you're like, I don't see an edge rusher I like, but we could fix the run defense right now,
Yep.
right? If you're telling me with one pick we can fix our run defense potentially, that's worth the swing at 25. Um, Peter Woods, yeah, I think once you get into 15 with the Bucks, once you get to 18 with the Vikings, 19 with the Panthers, I think we're an open season for him at that point. And then McDonald's going to be a little bit later, but the Chargers, Not the Browns, Chargers, the Bears, the Bills, the Niners, the Texans, that,
Hmm.
that range, which was 20. I mean, shoot, could the Cowboys even, right? 20, so 20 in the 20s, 20 to 28, 20, 29. I think that makes sense. All right, edge rusher. Here's the big one.
Here's the big one.
7.5. This is the biggest line I set. I ultimately went under, and I went with 7.
Okay.
And those guys are Arvell Reese, who we're counting as an edge, David Bailey, Ruben Bain, Keldrick Falk, Akeem Mesidor, TJ Parker. And then you're banking on one of, to even get to 7, I'm banking on one of Zion Young, Gabe Backus, Cassius Howell, Malachi Lawrence, R. Mason Thomas getting in. I I like Malachi Lawrence the best. I think he should end up being a first rounder. My prediction would be more that like Zion Young gets in. I just mentioned run defense. Um, a team at down there in the 20s who need the Chiefs need an edge rusher, need him to at least be able to stop the run. If he's going to play in the playoffs for us, and then hopefully he gets some pass rush juice. So Zion Young was who I went with as a 7. But if I'm going to get above that 7.5, now I have to bank on 2 of those guys getting in, right? Um, so that was ultimately what I went with. I probably came to 6 locks, but I think I can get to a seventh, but either way I'm gonna get to an under of 7.5. So what did you do here, Ben?
Yeah, I'm awfully close to you. I took the under as well. As far as specific names, I got 5 locks, probably six generic guys going, whoever that sixth guy ends up being. But I'm with you. I really couldn't get it past 7, man. We've done so many mocks, just tons and tons of mocks. If again, if we had done this back during October, the number probably would have been higher, honestly. But then, I just don't see it. So Reese, Bailey, Bain, lock, lock, lock. Falk, I think, is a lock. Mesidor, man, I'm just seeing too much of people that like him
Hmm.
that he's probably in. So that's for me the 5 specific locks. And then, man, between TJ Parker and Zion Young, from everything I'm hearing, I figure one of those gets in, but I don't
Yeah.
really figure both of them get in. So I was
Hmm.
at 6 or 7. I think there's a chance even though it's only 6. So I
Yeah.
logic was same as you.
Yeah, back in October, I remember like people were saying like Howell's a lock, or Mason
Mhm.
Thomas could get in.
Yeah,
Um, those guys feel way more round 2 guys to me, especially now. Um, I like Malachi Lawrence, man, but not a run defender. So like, is a team trying to win the playoffs going to take him, knowing that he's only a designated pass rusher? Maybe, maybe.
maybe.
Um, so we'll see. We'll get into some fun exercise with the edge rushers, and then yeah, Parker and Young are kind of like of the same build right now, right? Like 250 plus. I think Young is too. He at least plays like he's over 250. Um, run defender, strong, good long arms, like can hold an edge, can get to the quarterback a little bit, right? So that's kind of that when when you're getting to that last number, that sixth guy, almost seventh guy, that's the model that you're looking for.
Hmm.
All right, let's see. Let's move on here. Linebacker, 1.5. And Arvo Reese is not a part of this, so this is banking on a Jacob Rodriguez, a CJ Allen, Anthony Hill Jr., one of those guys sneaking in the first round. But I ultimately went under, and I went 1, Sonny Styles.
I did the same thing. Sonny Styles is the lock. I took the under here. My feeling is, once again, there's a lot of people that love Jacob Rodriguez. I mean, love
Hmm.
him, but I just don't see him being a first round guy. That would really surprise me. I feel like there's people that are plotting to get him somewhere in the second round. It's just a matter of who's going to get the grabbies first on him. Anthony Hill, back in September, October, he would have been a first round lock. That has long since passed. He's a
Hmm.
second round guy, even though I really do like him.
Yep.
CJ Allen was the closest bubble guy for me here. I do feel
Hmm.
like there is a real chance here that he slides into the last 4 or 5 picks of that first round. There are
Yeah.
teams that could use him that he would fit. So that one's really tough right there. But ultimately, I figured they go with other positions, and I've got the under at 1 here.
Yeah, I think if you look at like the Bills could have questionable linebacker play moving forward a little bit at 26. Um, you can never count out D'Amico in a linebacker. Just don't do it. So 28 Texans. I think he's got to be in the sights at that point. The Chiefs are probably fine. The Dolphins are probably fine with how many needs they have, and they have an all-pro linebacker. You'd think maybe, it wouldn't hurt to get another one or another good linebacker at least. But like I could see Vrabel taking CJ Allen right at 31. You can
Yeah,
like that makes a lot
right.
of sense. Um, Seahawks, I don't think will ultimately be there doing that, but that wouldn't necessarily shock me either. So there's certainly a couple teams down there. Um, could the Brown? I mean, the Browns at 24 probably wouldn't do another one after their defensive rookie of the year last year. But Patriots at 31. That's an interesting one. Let's keep that in mind. All right, corner. This one, Ben, when I said it, and obviously I went down this order, so I was like, I'm kind of running out of numbers to be honest with you. So maybe this was an easy over for you. But I'm starting to have a lot of questions. So I set this at 3.5,
Yeah.
and I ended up going under. I think Delane is my only lock. And listen,
Okay.
I didn't even think about this, and you're chuckling. Maybe this is just my anti-cornerback bias creeping back around, which I abandoned back in January when we finally did the defensive backs. But um, Delane is my only lock that I'm willing to put on, and he's going to go top 12. Right. So if you just look at the teams after that, right, the Jets at 16, the Ravens at 14, the Vikings at 18. Um, the Cowboys at 20 if they don't go corner at 12. The Panthers at 19. The Bears at 25. The Niners at 27. The Texans at 20. Like, there's a lot of teams that could look at corner. But this is, again, that intersection of team and player. And the only other guy other than Delane that I have as like a lock round one talent and profile is Avion Terrell. Now, Avion Terrell, though, is smaller and he ran a 4.64 40 at his pro day or his workout.
Yeah.
Now, we said this in the mock. Austin ended up taking him at 22. I love Avion Terrell. And we said we think that 4.64 is just he's coming back from the injury, so nobody should freak out. But we know a handful of teams saw the number and just crossed him off, right? We know they did.
Yeah.
And then a handful of teams saw the number, were like, oh, it's because of an injury, but crossed him off for the injury. We know a handful of teams have him crossed off because he's smaller and he's never really been a nickel, so they crossed him off. A handful of teams cross him off for the first round because they're like, we see him as a nickel and we don't take a nickel in the first round. We cross him
Hmm.
off. So
Yeah.
there's just enough question marks building that I'm like, okay, he's not a lock to go round one anymore. And then on top of that, if for me, Colton Hood and Jamal McCoy as profiles, and I've said all I need to say about Jamal McCoy, I don't need to do the whole thing again. But you add on top of that, the injury concerns are back up with him. Okay, there's questions about him. Um, I ultimately went with three, and I ultimately think someone will swing on McCoy, and Hood will kind of just emerge as like, oh man, is he actually going to be the second corner taken because of all these injuries?
Yeah.
Um, and then there's Chris Johnson lurking. So there's five names here that I think are around, and I mentioned all the teams that could go corner. Wouldn't shock me if all five went. But all of these guys just have enough questions, right? Hood never stuck in one place for a long time and has always kind of been viewed as this round two guy only getting pushed up because of all these concerns. McCoy, injuries and style of play for me. Avion Terrell, all the stuff I listed. Chris Johnson, size and competition level. Um, Delane's the only lock for me. So I went under the 3.5. What did you do?
I took the over on this one. So you're right about all the question marks. I'll start with that. You're also right about McCoy's medical concerns, and you're also right about a lot of these guys really being second round CBs. I mean, in almost any draft, that's what that whole second group is. Here's why I went different with the over. Delane, of course, we're totally agreed there is a lock. I left McCoy as a lock for two reasons. Number one, the med concerns did not seem to be anywhere near as severe as say Caleb Banks's med concerns.
Yep.
Seemed like a lot. It's just a matter of when, not if, he'll be
Mm,
healthy and ready to go. So that was one thing. Also, I figured the NFL teams are going to get a great look at McCoy and at least have answers about when they think he'll be ready to go. So I figure again that's just more recovery time, not recurring injury type things, although I could be wrong on that too. So I left, and besides the McCoy talent that we've seen on the field was consistent enough. I figure by somewhere in the 20s, somebody's going to grab him and just say the heck with it. He'll be ready when it's ready. So that I left McCoy as the lock. Hood, Cisse, Terrell, Chris Johnson. Those four. Those are all four bubble guys. But I figure two of them get in, And the biggest reason is it doesn't feel like there's as much depth there as there is at the wide receiver spot. So, me personally, because it looks like there's 10 to 12 wide receivers scattered all through the first three rounds of this draft, it feels like the guys I can collect at the early third round aren't much worse or no worse than the guys I could collect in the second round at wide receiver. So it pulls down that second group of wide receivers. I don't see as many cornerbacks floating around in the third round of this draft that I'm happy with, working in as starters. So I figure that's going to drive their value up a little bit. And that's going to push them, at least a couple of them, into the late first round, was the way I counted that. So that's how I got to four. I could even see five, but I kind of doubt that. So I came in at four, which would be an over.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, and there's a lot of names. See, let me look at corners real quick. Um, because obviously when you look at some other day two guys in terms of like pushing the value of this second tier up, D'Angelo Pons is there. Davison Igbeson, from Ohio State. He's a nice player. Um, and then you're looking at guys like in the hunt, kind of in the hundreds. Malik Muhammad, Devin Moore, Dalen Everett, Will Lee. And then, Chandler Rivers as a slot, Zakario Davis as a big outside guy, Psylocke, the other Washington guy, and then whatever you think about the nickel guys like Stukes and the guy from Miami, Keontae Scott.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of guys that also have questions and then also feel like they have ceilings, right? Like you're drafting a lot of those guys that I'm talking about for like depth and development
Yeah.
more than like filling a role right now necessarily. Like when I was watching Davison, one of my like number one things was I was like, he's gonna be a good gunner like right now. Like someone's gonna take him in like the fourth round, and he might be like a pro. Not they don't have all these enough spots for all these guys, but he might be like a
Right.
Pro Bowl caliber gunner right away. Like physical, like good long speed, like sticks his face and all that stuff. And like when that's like cornerback seven that you're talking about, you're but like Malik Muhammad, long arms, right?
Hmm.
Takario Davis, huge and fast. Like those are guys that are super interesting.
Yes.
So that's where you're talking about like development guys. Um, but yeah, I hear you. I'm with you there. And you're probably right on McCoy. Like it's going to be too hard to pass upon him unless the medicals are even worse than we even know, and those things have been up and down.
And they could
For
be.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
we
right.
don't we don't know what McCoy's meds are, so stay tuned on that.
All right, final position here, safety. I said at 2.5. So essentially, there's only three names to really think about here. Do all three get in? I ultimately said yes. I went with the over. I took all three. Downs, Thieneman, McNeil, Warren. I think all get into the first round.
I took all three as well, so I took the over. I was fairly comfortable doing that. It came down to talent for me. So Downs is the lock. Dylan Thineman is like a 90% lock with his free safety ability. So it really came down to Emmanuel McNeil Warren with that small school stuff keep him out. But I tell you, man, his aggressiveness, the way he hits, the way he moves around in the box, and the way he can steal center field too.
Yep.
I feel like come the last 8 to 10 picks, honestly, maybe even sooner than that. I feel like teams are going to have a hard time passing him up when they're looking at a defensive tackle or, a linebacker or, wide receiver five. I feel like they're going to have a hard time passing him up. Matter of fact, I think there's some teams that have their eye on him late first round, maybe not late first round, but those last 10 picks of the first round, I feel like there's teams that actually actively want him. So I was fairly comfortable putting in that third safety.
Yeah. Yeah. And that one. There's only three to consider, and I knew I was going over, so they're essentially locks. But I feel better at even just thinking of Neil Warren as a lock
Hmm.
more than
Yeah.
I even do as an Avion Terrell, who I really like. Um, his the profile again, the profile and just what everyone's saying, it just feels so much more like there's no way that somebody kind of lets this guy go, because this would be the guy that if the Seahawks are up there at 32 and they want to trade back, but they're like, oh well, McNeil Warren's just right here, like.
Uh-huh.
Let's just do that. Why are we messing around? We'll trade back from 64. We'll
I'm
we'll get more
telling you,
picks later.
I feel like there's a bunch of teams that would love to add McNeil Warren right on top of it. I mean, the 49ers, the Bills, would just love to slap him right on. Needs be darned. There's several teams just sitting all through there. The Cowboys, they may not take him that early, but they would love to slap him on at some point in the first round. So I feel like there's several teams that would love to just slap that aggressive hitting athleticism right over the top of their defense.
Yeah, if Thieneman goes to the popular place of Minnesota at 18,
Yeah.
I'm in Carolina at 19. Like clock's ticking for McNeil Warren at that point to
Yeah.
me. So I think he can go anywhere in the back third of the draft, basically, or
Hmm.
the first round, I should say. All right, that's gonna do it for this segment. We did it, Ben. 40 minutes. This is on Box Score Network. This is also on the Simon and Friends podcast, but Simon and Friends podcast, you are gonna get a second, less buttoned up version of this episode. So if you're here on Box Score Network and you're like, wow, I want to hear more of what these guys have to say, go to the Simon and Friends podcast, Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and we're gonna continue doing some fun preview stuff here. But it is draft day as this comes out. Draft day. And we wanted to keep this tight for you guys. So if you're on Box Score Network, thank you so much. Come back Friday because Ben and I will be recapping the first round and then come back all next week, all summer long because we will have 2026 draft content, 2027 draft content, and then just fun general draft content of all things in between those two things as well. So thank you so much. Enjoy the draft. Happy drafting. We will talk to you again soon.